Hello and welcome to Horrorific Chats. In this segment, we talk to independent creators to discuss their motivations and influences. Tonight, we're joined by Evan Baughfman, an author, playwright, and recent contributor to the show. Good evening, Evan. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Ah,
Thank you for having me.
fantastic. Another lovely weekend. We were just talking before we went live and the differences in weather and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's always good to have people on, especially with a show. We obviously display a lot of authors. We show your works, but I think it's really valuable to actually let people see the face behind the writing, so to speak, and get to know you, get to chat, and
Right.
just bring a bit of
Yeah.
life. That's what this is all about. Just bringing a bit of life to the creations and the creators, and let people
Right.
see what's going on.
You could show our faces and prove that we're not just creepy people like sitting in the shadows
Well, we
and
might
stuff
actually
like
prove that. that might actually validate the rumors.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
Mr. Spooky, yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually a funny thing because I talk to a lot of people in the horror genre, and honestly, most level headed people come across would just, would think about all dark creepiness and disturbing things.
Yeah.
Yet, in the real world, just like, okay. Is it something about getting it out of your system that
I
just
believe that. Yeah, I believe
levels you
that's
up?
got to be it. Because I agree. Like many of the other authors who I know, or just people who are fans of the genre. They're like some of the nicest, sweetest, caring people. And I think that might be it. That we're just like we get that darkness out of us in through the writing process, or even the I don't know, the enjoyment of a film or something like that. We're able to kind of expel some of that. We're not keeping it all pent up inside of us. So I think there's probably something to that.
Yeah, because there's something about, especially when you're in this kind of circle, you're speaking to people of the same genre, you've kind of got that dark sense of humor, and then you meet somebody in the real world and they're like, oh, how could you? And yet they're the ones that will probably try and get you sacked or stick a knife in your back or destroy you in some way or
Right.
all that sort of thing. Yet you're like, what did it say? I'm only making a joke about somebody getting chopped to pieces. Like, doesn't everyone?
Yeah, like a lot of my friends, they'll see like when it comes to like horror films, they'll see like the ones that get a lot of buzz and stuff. Um, like maybe they would
Oh,
see
you talking
like
like the torture porn type stuff, like the Saw
no, no, no.
franchise?
No, they would go see like maybe like I know the new Jordan Peele movie's coming out this summer. So like something that's more mainstream that's getting a lot of traction, they'll go see that and we could talk about that. But for the most part, most of my friends are not so into the genre. Um, but I definitely have met a few people along the way who are into it just as much as I am. My wife being one of them.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's one of the
That's
things.
half the battle. You're not
Yeah,
fighting over the TV.
yeah, that's one of the things that we bonded over is we actually both really liked horror movies. Um, yeah, we were actually married on Friday the 13th.
There you go.
Yeah,
How long's that been?
we just celebrated our 10th
Well,
anniversary.
there you go. Lucky
Yeah,
for some, eh?
yeah, yeah.
That the actual
So
Friday the 13th myth that comes from the Templar Knights. It was which pope was it? Pope Julius or Paul the First? Basically, he didn't want to pay the Templars for their service, so he had
okay,
them executed. No, it was King Philip. Sorry, I knew it was King Philip in France. Basically, didn't want to pay them, so he
right,
ended up having the order wiped out, and he did it on a Friday the 13th. So that then became synonymous, and that's how that whole thing
okay,
came about. It's funny where our myths and legends come from. It's always based in something, either a
yeah.
lesson or an event in history,
Mhm.
and it's actually just as fascinating to try and go back and find out. Okay, where did this start?
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't actually even know that. So yeah, thanks for letting me know. Um,
I'm a honestly, I have
yeah,
so many useless facts in my head that it actually pushes all the useful stuff out. So
right.
I can barely remember what I did last week, but I'll pull something like that out of my head, no bother. Or if I'm
Yeah.
reviewing a movie, I'll forget the actors' names, the characters' names. I'll mix them up. I'll mix the plot up, and I've only watched it the night before, and then something
Mhm.
random from 20 years ago will just go ping and start rattling about.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that happens to me a lot too. Because I'm a teacher, and so when I'm teaching a lesson, sometimes like I go on these. tangents of like something that's just popped into my head that I think, oh, these kids should know this random tidbit or whatever. So
It's not in the syllabus. It's not going to help in
no,
their exams, but that's the thing they'll remember.
right, exactly, exactly.
I remember
Yeah.
my old chemistry teacher. He taught us how to make basic Alka Seltzer using sulfuric acid.
Okay.
And that was one of the random things to remember. And flip biology was always remember like chordae tendineae, the heartstrings. But when it came to the exam, I'm like,
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm sure your chemistry teacher, if he's still around, he'd appreciate the fact that years later you still remember
yeah,
that.
Norman, he was absolute. There's a character back in the UK, a TV show called Danger Mouse, and there was a little mole called Penfold, and he was the absolute spit of Penfold. That's why, and the reason why he stuck in my head. And he had the same
Yeah.
smile, and he was just happy, and he just went off on one, like you're saying. He just started teaching lessons, and then he'd go off to these tangents, and I remember all the tangents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I remember anything off a syllabus now? No chance.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why I didn't go into science, because got the first year failed. So I went into administration
Yeah.
and data analysis instead, because it was easy.
Right. Yeah.
Fun times, but yeah. So that must be a bit of a balancing act then. If you're a fan of horror, but especially in this day and age with kids being, I don't know if it's the kids being so sensitive or their parents. I
Mm,
would suspect the parents more so, because kids, I think, are more resilient and tougher than people give them credit for.
absolutely. Yeah.
But how do you balance that? Because obviously, being a horror fan, it must come out so often. And how do you toe that line where you have to keep yourself in check so you don't end up getting like torches and pitchforks at the school gates with parents
Yeah.
wanting to throw you out?
Yeah. No. Actually, at least where I'm teaching, I think the part of the U.S. where I live and I teach, it's pretty progressive. So we're not, at least in my school site, I don't see a lot of like parents being up in arms about things. But I'm also, I'm not, I'm not really trying to incorporate any like R-rated um, stuff into the curriculum by any means. I do share, I do have freedom to share spooky stories with kids and stuff, but I always, vet it ahead of time, make sure that it's something that's appropriate. Certainly, if a student is interested in maybe a horror films or stuff, I can suggest it. I can suggest some options, but no, I mean, I'm a veteran teacher at this point. I've been doing it for about 16 years now, so I I don't make as many mistakes as maybe I used to when I was a younger educator. I've taken my licks, I've learned my lessons, and yeah, it's pretty much like a well-oiled machine at this
So
point.
now
I
you're
think
just
for
like,
myself.
come in, flick the switch, crack on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you say kids and
Um,
all ask you about horror, because it almost seems to be, it's become now such a niche genre, and it seems to fall into minimum 30 plus, because like 20-year-olds aren't really watching horror now. I don't know
mm,
what they're watching. There seem to be just, whatever the latest flashy light thing coming from Disney, it seems to be what
right.
everyone's watching, and more and
Right.
more we're getting pushed to the side. In my local cinema, I was talking about this in the previous one, I went to go see Uma. They had it advertised, and then when I went to go see it the same day, it was not shown, and then they never showed it back again. I'm like, what's that about?
Okay.
So a horror movie has very limited showtime now, and they'll
Okay.
instantly replace it with the latest flashy thing. The kids still have a curiosity. Do they like spooky stuff?
Yeah.
Like, is this genre gonna? Are we the last, or is there a future? That's basically, I mean, not
Yeah.
something else
Yeah.
about kids, but is there a future for the genre? Is there an interest, and like the next generation or the past generations, coming up? Are
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are they still interested?
Yeah, no, I mean, there definitely are kids who are, they will be, as you said, carrying the torches. They'll be the ones writing the scary stories in the future, going to the going to the movies and supporting the horror films. Yeah, I actually host a horror club at at my school. We meet once a week, and I have about a dozen kids who show up weekly, and uh, we read scary stories, or we like do some like scary drawings of zombies and monsters and things. I also show them clips from appropriate.
I was about
Uh,
I was just gonna let you speak it and
yeah,
say, where is the line then? Because that's like
yeah,
teetering right up the edge. You know what I mean? That's
right. So what I try to do is I try to share with them things that I don't think they even know exist. So I've shown them like episodes from Twilight Zone. I've shown them, there was a show that was on when I was younger called Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was on Nickelodeon. And so I've shown some episodes of that. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was actually filmed at the high school that I went to.
all right.
And
That's
so,
the
yeah,
series.
the series, yeah.
Because that film
And
was terrible. That's I've never seen. That's
yeah,
the first time a TV series has rescued a movie because it's normally the other way around. Normally the movie comes out
right.
it's really good, and then the TV series gradually destroys the franchise. This is the opposite effect because the movie was awful. It was flat,
Mhm.
and then the TV series come on and actually gave it a bit of life.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I don't think
you know,
people even remember the movie.
yeah, I don't even think I've actually even seen the movie, but I've definitely seen the TV show because they were filming it when I was at the school. It was still, she was a student at her school, but was actually my school. Um, so that got me interested in the show. And as someone who was already like dabbling in interests in the horror genre, uh, yeah, that show really appealed to me. And it's got, that blend of horror and humor, um, that I shared with my students because this is a show that was like went off the air before they were born, so they didn't know it was a thing, and so you know,
We were talking
now they
about one
do.
last week. The Watcher
Yeah.
in the Woods. Have you seen that?
No.
It's actually a Disney movie. And
Okay.
it's a Disney movie trying to go into the horror genre. And oh my word, you can just tell the worlds do not. I mean, these are two worlds colliding, and you know what I mean. Disney's like, we don't know what to do here. That we don't
Okay.
understand this horror stuff. We're trying to sprinkle it
Okay.
with Disney magic, and it's worth checking out. Honestly,
Okay.
Bette
The
Midler
Watcher in the Woods.
was
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check that out. Certainly.
yeah, but that was the
Yeah.
first and only
Yeah.
time Disney thought to try horror, and
Yeah. This upcoming week in my horror club, I'm going to show snippets from Hitchcock's The Birds. I know my students have no idea who Alfred Hitchcock was. They have no idea what The Birds was. So again, I'm just trying to like show them like, hey, there's all these different things are in that are out there that were there before us, and check it out.
yeah,
Uh,
Vertigo
you
would be a
know,
good one to show them as well.
maybe,
Because
yeah. I
that's
haven't seen
not,
that
you know what
one
I mean, it's
before.
not, obviously you don't want to show them Psycho, that'll be a bit, step too
Yeah,
far, that's where you're crossing the line, but
right,
Vertigo would be a good one, and then shows how something like that can be used as a tool,
right.
you know, in overcoming fear and adversity, you know, that was a classic, yeah, I think, everyone's just saying the same blad, and this is why I'm a proponent for independent creators, and why we
Mhm.
need more independent creators out there, because mainstream is just showing the same cookie cutter, pointless
Right.
stuff with shiny lights, and there's no
Yeah.
substance, there's no thought. You know, I mean, you don't look at the movie anymore, and you think behind it, or there's no discussion about could it mean this or could it mean that, because everything's spelt
Mhm.
out.
Right.
Where, like
Right.
Hitchcock, for example, you know, what I mean, he was a master of his craft.
Right.
His famous quote was that rather the audience be confused than bored.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He wanted people talking about the movies, and he didn't give out, you know, the meaning behind it. You know, that's where the
Right.
discussion happens. And I think
Yeah.
that's something we're missing in society. That's why everyone's coming lockstep into gangs of we think this, we think these exact words, and
Right.
then if somebody
Exactly.
else comes along and don't think those exact words, they're the worst in the world.
Yeah.
And I think critical
No,
thought, you
yeah,
know,
I agree. I agree. We're lacking some critical thinking. I mean, as a teacher, that's my colleagues and I around the world. I mean, that's what we're trying to instill in these young people is to like those critical thinking skills, being able to think for yourselves and like If you have opinions, that's great, but you got to support what your opinions are with like some evidence, some reasoning. Like, you can't just say things without you know learning how to prove your point. So
Yeah, unfortunately these days it seems to be somebody makes a point, the other person shouts them down and makes a
yeah,
personal attack, and I mean discourse has almost vanished, which is a tragedy because that's how else do you grow as a society? How else do you
yeah,
share ideas? Not everyone has the same experience. Not
yeah.
everything, even in horror, there's a debate of what horror is. Is this horror? Isn't it horror? It's like, well, what do you get from it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, horror is so vast. I mean, it's so many different things, so many different subgenres within it. There's literally something for everybody. And I think, you know, part of what I want to do as a writer is myself occasionally, I don't always do this, but I like to write stuff that is more kid friendly. Kid friendly with a bite, I would say.
Yeah, because you have a whole
Um,
repertoire. You don't just write horror. You write young adult material. You cross. I think you do a bit of science fiction as well. Is that right?
yeah, so
So
I
you have a whole you have a broad spectrum of material.
right. Yeah, I primarily, when it comes to prose writing, to my fiction writing, I primarily stay within the horror genre because that's just like my favorite genre to read. Um, and so it just comes to me naturally because it's been something I've been into for years and years. But I also have a lot of success as a playwright. So when I write plays, the plays tend to be different genres, although I've written a lot of horror plays too. Um,
Yeah, that was something I was
but
going to
yeah.
ask you. So the thought process, obviously, when you're writing a novella or a novel
Mhm.
book, is there a different thought process when you're creating that material to communicate to the audience as opposed to creating a play? What's the kind of creative process? Do you have to go into a different headspace, or do you have a
Um,
story? Does it come out a certain way? How do you know the difference between you're going to write a story
right.
as opposed
Mhm.
to a play that somebody's actually going to act in?
Right. So, um, I guess just structurally, they're a little bit different in that when it comes to prose writing, you can have more time to describe setting and do like more exposition. You have more opportunity to get inside of the character's head. Whereas with a play, you can't do that. Things are communicated more through dialogue and action on the stage. And so yeah, typically if I think that a story needs to be something that's more dialogue driven, then that's probably a play. And if it's something that is more an internal journey for the protagonist, then that's going to be more like a short story or a piece of prose. Um,
So you
although
don't have a specific. You don't sit down and go, "I'm doing a playwright. I'm doing a novel." You have the idea first, and then let it
yes,
take
right,
form, and then as it takes form, that's where you decide. You sort of get to that crossroads, and then you have to make
right,
that decision. Is that kind of the way your thought process goes?
yeah. So you go online and you see, I subscribe to different groups on social media that post different. There are groups that are like for playwrights, so there are groups that post like playwriting opportunities. Like theaters are looking for plays that are about this, and so that will. I already know immediately that whatever I'm writing is going to be a play because they're looking for specifically a play. And the same is for like prose writing. I see a submission opportunity. Oh, we're looking for a horror story that's set in the woods or something like that. Then I automatically know, okay, well, this whatever I write here, it's not going to be a play. It's going to be
So you're
a
always
story.
going with the thought process that you're going to submit your piece. You have a basically a home for it, or you're aiming to have a home for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So does that give you more focus? Do you
Yeah.
prefer to work
It
like that as opposed to idea? Do you need that sort of carrot dangled in front of you, so to speak?
it's definitely a motivator for sure. Like, don't get me wrong. The majority of the opportunities I submit to, they don't. end up panning out.
Oh no, but that's once again, it's
But
not about
but yeah, but no, definitely like a goal in sight. Yeah, like I'm writing this and I will submit it to this, whether it, whether it gets accepted or not. It's not really
no, but it's the
the
motivation. It's sort of, what I mean. You have the goal and the
yeah,
focus. That's what makes you right.
right.
What we
And
try to do in
that's
this show is
yeah,
basically, I think people come into maybe thinking about self-publishing or creating for the first time, and they're just overwhelmed. They don't know where
right,
to start. The you know what I mean.
right,
They have an idea, they want to put it out there, or they don't know how to motivate themselves. So what I'm trying to show through this by speaking to
yeah,
uh, different people, and that's why I've always say from the start, there's no right and there's no wrong. There is no one way. It's all about the
exactly,
options. So maybe somebody that's has a big idea in their head, but they're never gonna get it put forward. If they think, okay, well, how about if I'm focused? So, like yourself, you're actually physically going out and looking for the opportunities to submit
right,
to. So that's how you get your ideas and motivation, because you're actually looking, okay, what does somebody want? That's making you
yeah,
then create the piece. Now,
right,
whether it pans out or not, it doesn't matter. You've actually got a method and
right,
I mean, you've also got yourself, because by doing that, obviously everything has a deadline. So then you're pushing yourself into that deadline. Is that correct?
hmm,
Because you
yeah,
have to finish it by that pace. So
exactly,
that could work for a lot of people. What I want people to know is that options there. Here's a technique. So if something that you're maybe looking at the moment doesn't work, well, here's what Evan does. Give that a bash. That's what we're trying to,
right,
bring out people, because
yeah,
I want more creators. We need them. We're desperate for more people putting work out there, because if we just leave it to the main publishers or the
mhm,
corporations, we're stuffed.
right.
You know what I mean? Ideas, I think, are just so important.
Yeah, no, so
Imagination is what makes us what we
absolutely,
are.
absolutely, yeah. So yeah, to your point, I would suggest for someone who is like wants to create something but maybe is lacking the motivation. Yeah, like you said, I would maybe just find a submission opportunity that sounds interesting, and like that deadline will motivate you, I think, just to get something done. And if it gets rejected, I mean, that's what happens to most people.
Oh
I've been
yeah, but
rejected so,
at
so
least you've
thousands,
went through it. You've
like,
created something.
and just because something's not a fit for one publisher or one theater company doesn't mean it's not going to be a fit elsewhere. I have this huge stable of things I've written that were rejected the first time or the first few times, but they eventually found a home. So, um, yeah,
So basically,
the
time is not
advice, yeah,
wasted. If
yeah,
you create and produce something, you're not wasting
mhm,
your time. I
exactly.
think a lot of people as well, they're very short sighted. And I think it's because of online culture, because of the way technology is rapidly
Mhm.
advanced. And like I've seen it over the last even 20 years of my life, um, just the rapid progression. And now everything is expected. There's this expectation, a click of a button, everything happens.
Right.
And people don't understand that it's not going to always happen at the click of a button. For the number of like what viral videos or overnight successes you hear, there's a
Right.
million failures. You know what I mean? And it's not about the failure; it's the dust yourself off, pick yourself up, get back out there.
Right. Yeah. My dream as a young person was that I would be a full-time author. I mean, I went to college and studied creative writing with the hope that, as soon as I have that degree and all that, I'd be able to, go out there and just be like this famous published author. And that's not how it happened, you know? I've been a teacher for 16 years now, and I love it. It's something that I've grown to love. Maybe at first I felt like, oh man, maybe this is just like I'm just doing this because I can't hack it as a writer. But it turned out, being a teacher was actually really good for my writing. Um, I saw that a lot of students they didn't like to read. So I kind of started to make it a challenge to myself. Like, I'm going to write stories, I'm going to write plays, and we're going to read them in my class. And maybe I can show these kids that, reading doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be dry. right? There's really exciting, interesting stuff out there. And so I was starting to generate stuff just for my students to read. And then it turned out, it made me think, okay, well, maybe this is something I could do in the future. Have a book of my own stories that are for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first book I got published, is a book of short, spooky stories for kids. So
That's what got me into reading short spooky. In fact, I can't even
yeah,
remember. I remember there being a picture of a white owl on the front because my local library, was my haven growing up.
yeah.
Now, granted, I wasn't the best reader as a child, so I read a lot of Tintin, The Adventures of Tintin, and Asterix and Obelix. Don't know if they were graphic novels.
Graphic novels are great. I love graphic novels. I
They're
read a
actually
lot.
French in origin,
Yeah.
like years ago, Sign of the Times. But that started me off, and then started moving myself into the novel section, and there's this horror like collection. I think it's about 12 stories or something. I just remember a picture of a white owl, and it was one of the stories, but I cannot for the life of me remember what was in the book. But I do remember that book, and I remember the feeling I got from reading it,
Right.
and then that kind of got me wanting more. And the fact that you can step into yourself and just
Right.
detach from the world for a bit and go to another world without having devices or relying on somebody else to bring it to you. You know what I mean? You've got it there in front of you, and your brain takes you there.
Yeah.
That's my
Absolutely.
worry. My worry is that's being lost.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, that's certainly a concern for educators everywhere. We see these kids on their cell phones all the time, trying to be on the phones during class time, things like that. And yeah, the over reliance on the social media and the technology, it can be it can be frustrating, certainly. But definitely, we're out here, we're trying to show kids that there's value to reading, there's value to writing. And then for me, like I said, I'm trying to show these kids that reading can be fun. Not everything you're going to read is fun, but there certainly are things out there if you go looking for them. And so, uh,
Have you seen success? I know you've got your horror club and you've actually got kids turn up. There's 12 potentials, they like the spark within. But have you actually, through your technique, have you seen any successes, or maybe not necessarily producing new authors, but have you seen maybe a kid will pick up a book now where they wouldn't have before?
absolutely. Yeah. So I have in my classroom, my classroom library, and yeah, those books get checked out. Not every book gets checked out, obviously. I work closely with our librarian at school as well, and she's she's a great resource herself. And there are lots of thousands and thousands of books in that library, and so work with her to also help motivate students with their literacy. Um, and part of what I do is I have kids actually create their own stories. Um, they write their own short stories. They write their own plays. Um, I teach them what I was taught in college, basically. Maybe not as in such a rigorous fashion, but I definitely do my best to have these kids exercise the creative aspects of their brains and come up with their own stuff. And over the years, there's some really there are very many talented young people out there. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
yeah.
I'm sick of people boiling kids down to, like, just product. They're just product to be used, and they forget that these are tiny human beings still trying to find their way in the world. And I'm
Yeah.
sick of everything being over politicized. I'm sick of that toxic element being brought into everything, especially you see it in education as well. Just can't let go. And it's like, you're not,
Right.
this is going to cause damage in the long run. Sorry if everyone's not going to agree with you, but
Right.
if people don't have the freedom and the encouragement to think for themselves, we're not going to develop.
Right.
What I mean? As a people, we've come so far, and it's almost like we're going backwards. And the ease of social media, and then not having to think and expecting people to, like, just give you the answer for everything and not look for it yourself. What I was going to say there, you were talking about the librarian and that. A major fight we're having in the UK is to try and keep libraries.
Okay.
Because you know, what I mean, it's always the thing that the cut. Oh, not enough people turn up. How vital is? Am I showing my age, being an old fuddy duddy? But am I one of the few that think the library's still a valuable resource, even
Hmm.
though you can go and get books now at the click of a button. The
Right.
fact that you can, you know, what I mean, people think, oh, you've got Kindle, you can download everything, but very what we've found is a lot of people download stuff on the Kindle, but they don't read it. But there's something
Yep.
about going into a bookstore, like bookstores are down out, which is an absolute shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is there a place for
Absolutely.
libraries still?
Absolutely. Um,
How do we get people to understand that they're not? It's not a useless
gosh.
entity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we change people's mindset. It's really hard for me to relate to people like that because I've grown up being a reader, and I have a Kindle, but I don't actually use it. I love the physical feel of a book and turning the pages, and I love exploring a bookstore. I love exploring the shelves at a library and just like stumbling across something that I never knew even existed, and suddenly being introduced to,
I
a new
think people
author.
forget that as well. Not everything stays in print.
Yeah.
So even though it might be on Amazon, you know, obviously that's the biggest one, or Barnes and Noble, you know, just because it's available now doesn't mean it always will be. And there's stuff. I'm working in a basically digital archivist place at the moment, and it's, you
Yeah.
know, a lot of genealogy and libraries basically giving over their reference section because some of the books are like falling to pieces. So we're
Mhm.
obviously preparing them, scanning them, and yesterday I was hacking the pieces something from the 12th century,
Right.
and it was I mean it was written in quill and ink, and
Okay.
I've got the scalpel and the glove. You know, what I mean, I'm
Oh
crying.
wow.
You know, what I mean, I was like a vegan in an abattoir. You know, what I mean, that was the level of horror I
Right.
was
Yeah.
facing. You know, what I mean, cutting into
Yeah.
this, but I understood that it only had. You know, what I mean, it's there's only so much
Hmm.
can be hermetically sealed and preserved. You know, what I mean, eventually that stuff's going to degrade, and you see some of the stuff falling apart. But I'm looking at this going, there's 100 years left in this. Why am I doing this? And you have got to think of the bigger picture. Why you're
Hmm.
slicing something to bits. So libraries can have these volumes that you'll never see now in the bookstores,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's uh,
Yeah.
how do we get
You
people
know.
back? Because
Yeah. Gosh.
I know the magic
Well.
of it, I know
Yeah.
the value, and it's a long term thinking,
Mhm.
and that's where you find the random ideas. Somebody's published something 150 years ago,
Right.
and you'll only see it maybe the local area, so only your local library will have that particular volume,
Right.
and that's an opportunity for somebody to find something that isn't mainstream, and that's where a new idea can kick in. How do we go about that?
Gosh. I wish I knew. I wish I knew the answer to that. All I can speak to is what I personally do, and that is as a teacher, I'm taking my students to the school library, and I'm showing them, hey, this is what a library is. Look at all the amazing things that are in here. Yeah. And my own children, my son and daughter, like we go to the library often.
Yeah, I see
We
some
go
of
to
their.
bookstores.
I guess that that's some of their works behind you.
Yeah, yeah, we go to bookstores often. Um, you know, I don't know that I have an answer about the world at large, but at least with the young people who I have some relationship to, I'm able to share my love of reading and writing and literacy with them. And hopefully it catches, right? And in the future they are themselves adults who are reading and going to libraries and bookstores themselves. Um,
Yeah, here's
yeah,
hoping
hopefully.
because I think especially because of social media. There's an article I was reading there that basically because we have a proclivity to read bad news and it's part of the reflex, the danger in the back of our brains. That's why everything's filled with negative news because that's the thing we stop. You know, the analogy is the car crash. If we see a car crash, we slow down, we look across. That's just our natural inbuilt reaction. So
Right.
because social media has twigged on that, and that's the thing that gets the clicks, that's what we're constantly getting bombarded with. So you can get this sense of hopelessness
Absolutely.
if you just stay in the social media bubble. So another thing I want to try and do with this podcast is at least get a which might seem weird for a horror genre, but get a bit of flipping positivity out there that it's not all going to come to an end next week and we'll have a chance, and that the next generation
Right.
isn't lost.
Yeah.
They're
No, I
still
mean,
human beings with their own brains. You know what I mean?
absolutely. I can tell you, as an educator, there are so many really great kids out there, and they're gonna grow up and be great adults. Um, I have hope. I see it in my classroom daily. All the students who are critical thinkers, students who are creative, uh, they're creative, they're artists. Um, and so, yeah, there definitely is hope.
That's good
Uh,
because that is the imagination and creativity are the sparks of humanity. That's how we've come from crawling out of caves to where we are now.
mhm.
I don't want it to stop. I'd like to think that in 100 years, people look back at us as the Neanderthals when we're fighting with each other on social media and have progressed. What I don't want to know is we're going back into some post-apocalyptic version of the
Yeah,
world, and this is where it starts. You know what I mean? I want to put the brakes on. I happen to like life,
yeah,
and
yeah. And my own kids here at home also, I try to instill in them a love of the arts. I mean, you can see behind me there's artwork and
yeah, that's
stuff.
what I made a reference. And
Yeah,
obviously, these are your kids,
yeah,
work, which is cool, giving them an outlet.
yeah. And my kids themselves, they're creative thinkers. They love to create. My daughter in particular, she's going to be an artist of some kind. She's like into every type of artistic venture that's out there, dance and drawing and writing and music. Like she's into everything. And so um yeah, I think it's great. There are young people everywhere who are getting into the arts, getting into reading, and yeah, all I can say is, yeah, the world at times can feel like it's going down the wrong path. But
Mm-hmm.
I certainly you could see it that way. But for me, I try to look at things less cynically, just because I am working with young people, and I do see a lot of positivity with the people that I'm with. So
Well, that's good. I think we need more of a message to get out of her because unfortunately, a lot of educators you see on social media are activists, and they're not
yeah,
pleasant people. And then
yeah,
it's like, oh my god, is this what's teaching the next generation? We are stuffed. You know what I mean? And
right,
they're so wrapped up in whatever dogma or ideology they've got. They're just seeing troops in front of them, and it's like, come on.
yeah. It- at least in my experience, it's the issue with education is not so much the kids. It's more like kind of the focus on testing and less focus on the creativity that we should probably also be fostering as educators. But everything right now, unfortunately, it's a lot of test preparation
Trying
and
to quantify
focusing
everything into a grade or a percentage.
on. And so I think a lot of educators' frustration is more like we're not given the autonomy that we want. We want to be able to do more creative projects with students. We want to be able to like bring more of our own personal interests and personalities into what we do. And I feel that unfortunately at times it feels like maybe we're just not being allowed to do that. We're being told, hey, this is what you have to teach a certain way. And that can be certainly frustrating for
Yeah,
educators
I've
that
seen
way.
it in the workplace. You got these people wonderfully qualified. They come in and they cannot think outside the box. And I mean, if it doesn't go by the company line, if the one little thing comes and moves them out of that, they're lost. and I've
Right.
actually watched people fall apart on the spot over something really simple.
Yeah.
Something even like, okay, the work has run out on this section. I'm going to bounce over here, up, and you just watch somebody close. You see the shutters go down,
Hmm.
and you're like, really?
Yeah.
But this procedure, that never mind. As long as you're getting stuff done, and no one's getting hurt, nothing's getting stolen, and productivity continues. And it doesn't matter what industry, what I mean. That's what we're looking at, and because there is no creativity, and it's almost been beaten out of people,
Mm.
because that's the way it feels. That I think I was lucky because I was a weirdo. That's why I'm the way I am, because most people my generation have absolutely no critical thought. They're just,
Mm.
when they're almost zombies. It's really sad to see.
Yeah.
Apart from, like, remarkable individuals who've managed to push through that, but which I'm not saying I'm not. I'm just a weirdo, like I said, and I embrace
Yeah.
that. But I've seen that where people just want to go buy the book over everything, and it's good having the book. It's good having a set of structure to keep you grounded, but you need imagination.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're trying to say. If you can foster that, if you at least make that effort to foster that imagination and let somebody know it's okay not to have the answer, you can go and find it out,
Right.
or
Absolutely.
you can come up with something wacky if you want, but you don't know where that's going to lead. So you have 10 wacky ideas. The one of them might lead to something concrete. How do you know unless you
Yeah.
try and think?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it feels like I'm getting on a bit of a soapbox here, but then I said to you at the start, that's the way this goes. It's just let's go on a chat in a random tangent, see
Yeah.
where we end up.
I support your imagination soapbox. I support that.
Absolutely. So you've been involved with a lot, like I said, a lot of groups and all. How have you found the experience there? Because there seems to be quite a lot of antagonism in writing in particular for some reason. Especially the whole, are you published, are you self-published, or have you done it this way? And people seem to get really aggressive about it. Have you encountered some of that?
Um, you know, I my my first book is published through a small, like an indie press.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's great that there are so many like options for publication now, whether that's self-publication or smaller indie presses. I think it's great that these opportunities are out there because it gets people's voices out there. The more voices you have out there, more opportunities for someone to be inspired themselves. I think so. I think it's great that things are the way they are as far as being able to self-publish, being able to get your own content out there in ways other than just going through like the traditional publishing route where you're relying on agents and things like that. Obviously, getting an agent would be a cool thing. Like I'd be up for that someday if the opportunity arose, but
But one doesn't
there's a way
preclude
to
the
make.
other. That's what another thing I'm trying to
No,
make a point of here. There is no one way. I just don't understand the antagonism. Why people get so wound up. Like it was originally, you're either traditionally published or self-published, and everyone panned on the self-publishers, and then it became tradition, self-published, indie published, and then now you're sitting getting the people panning on the indie publishers, and it's like, why do people need to do that? What's the mindset?
yeah, no, I don't get it. I don't know. A sense of elitism, maybe. I don't know. Um, I I think it's great that there's just so many ways to get your stuff out there. I really appreciate it. I mean, my work would not be out there if it weren't for you know s- smaller smaller publishing houses taking a chance on me. So I really appreciate that. I think it's great. And
Absolutely,
so,
it's and that's, like I said, how that's how you distill the ideas. Do you know what anyone that's ever just been influenced by one person solely or one idea?
No.
It never, you know what I mean? You
No.
might have somebody
Yeah.
who you're inspired by, but you're never inspired by that one idea. It's a combination, and the more ideas and writing styles and, people mashing things together, that. It's like cooking, you know what I mean? You've all the ingredients, but somebody might throw them together in a different way that you're not going to replicate that way, but it sparks something in your imagination to create your own recipe,
Right.
and I just don't understand. And that's why I'm trying to ask, about people's, because I try to stay off social media as much as I have to use it for this podcast.
Right.
Personally, I step back because it just gives me a headache. But I just don't understand the mindset of why people. I don't know if it's fear or you say possibly elitism, but why there's such antagonism, or why instantly when an idea is put up there, there has to be somebody that instantly takes the opposite stance of whatever it is. Do you butter your side, your toast on the left side or the right side, or do you cut the crusts off? There'll be instantly somebody that has the opposite side, and they want to destroy you for having your opinion or idea or liking. We are talking about Terrifier at the start or
Hmm.
before it went live. You know what I mean? There's people will hate on that movie, and
Right.
they will actually slag off people that say they like it, and to me, that's not something worth having an argument about. I mean,
Certainly not.
there's better things to have an argument about, but people get so emotionally invested in, I don't know, is it their idea or their stance that they then
Right.
have to attack someone? And it's, like I said, this culture's just permeated everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Social media. It's yeah. It's that double-edged sword where it's great. It's good in some ways to be,
Well, we're sitting
connected.
here
Obviously.
having a conversation from opposite ends of the globe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If it wasn't for social media, this would not happen. And it's got that
Right.
stage. It is as comfortable as sitting in the same room together. It's fantastic.
Right.
I'm able to keep in touch with people, various stages of my life, who live all over the world. And you can almost see them on a daily basis in some format. So I'm not for 1 second slagging off the actual tool. I just don't understand with the
Right.
culture. Or in terms of creativity, I can understand political issues. If somebody's against something and it's going to affect them, I can understand them getting upset. What I don't understand is, okay, somebody's published a book this way and people really enjoy it, but that's not the way I like it, so I'm going to attack you and I'm going to get other people to attack you over it. Or I like a movie, I don't like that movie, so I'm going to attack you over it. Why is that?
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I personally am not like that. As someone who is a creator and an artist, I know how much work it takes into creating something. Like it's hours and hours and hours and hours of your time and your energy go into creating this thing. And like, so I know what goes into creating something. So that's why I would never, bash someone for what they created because I know that they put their so much effort into it. I know what it
And
takes.
there's a
And
bit of
so,
yourself. It isn't
yeah.
just manufacturing something.
Hmm.
Actually, there was a live stream a couple of days ago, and they've described the movie industry as working at McDonald's, which I thought was a perfect analogy. People are getting now creators into these main corporations, and it is like working at McDonald's. All they're doing is they're standing with a fryer, dropping it in. They're not actually creating anything. They just have to go by here's the company menu. You will put something together in that shape because that's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. I've even gotten into like writing short screenplays and being able to go to like independent film festivals and stuff, independent horror film festivals, and there are a lot of great people out there creating amazing content that's outside the mainstream. So like there are people who in the indie scene are they're doing things different. They're making
I'm actually
exciting
scheduling a
content.
couple of those guys to come on next month, hopefully.
Yeah.
To have a chat. So I
Yeah.
have a couple of filmmakers. We're reviewing one tomorrow. That was created independently. So I'm starting to actually, through this, get in touch with those guys as well because it's all,
Right.
it's great to see. yes, you're not going to get Hollywood budget or quality in terms of the money spent in effects, but as long as the heart's there and creating the story, why not? You can only get better. You
Right.
can only get a bigger budget.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of great stuff out there. You gotta be open minded, and you gotta search for it. You, yeah. So
Absolutely. Like I said, we had some questions here. I just better make sure I've not left anything important out because this
okay.
is what
Yeah.
happens. And that's
For sure.
I wouldn't want it to be any other way, to be honest. Like I don't want
Yeah.
this to be a cookie cutter. When did you start writing? What is your robotic sort of? I want to.
Right.
This has been
Uh,
fantastic. Just new ideas and different perspectives. That's what makes the world a more interesting place. Yeah. So you have a full time career. How do you go about managing your time? Because that's maybe what puts a lot of people off. Okay, I've got a full time job. I don't want to give up my job because I have to live, so to speak. So, what is your? I know you've already mentioned about going for projects, so that forces you to have the deadline. But how do you go about managing your time, especially with the family as well, which you seem to be very involved with, which I'm
yeah.
sure takes up a lot of your time. How do you meld it all together?
So it's gotten to the point where it's just part of my routine. You know, I make it a routine. It used to be when my kids were younger, I would wake up early and I would, before they woke up, and I would get my hour of writing in at the start of the day. And then when that was not working so well for me because I was maybe getting tired later in the day, then I tried to do the opposite, where I would try to do my writing um, at night. But whatever it was, I was always like making sure that I have like an hour where I'm doing something, whether it's actually writing or submitting to somewhere. At least I'm doing something that's like trying to further my writing career in some way. Now, waking up super early to do writing, that's not for everyone. Staying up late to do writing, that's not for
I'm
everyone.
a grumpy
I'm
kid in the
lucky.
mornings.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that as a teacher, my students leave my classroom at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I have this huge my classroom, this huge quiet private space where now my routine is I'm writing for an hour in my classroom once my students leave. So I have that time where I do my job. I have my time to do my creative writing afterward, and then I go home and I spend time with my wife and kids. So I'm lucky, at least in that my schedule is now aligned in a way where I'm able to do that. But
I've talked to a few people. An hour seems to be the golden time. I think a lot of people think that you have to spend 6 hours a day in front of a keyboard
right,
or with a notepad,
right,
and
yeah,
that's unattainable. I mean, your brain, especially if you get to my age, I'm an old fart, so like, I start falling
right,
asleep and boring myself, never mind anyone else. But an hour seems to be a good amount of time to spend on sort of focus writing. You've also mentioned there promoting and submitting.
yeah,
Is that just as important to factor in that time to actually get yourself out there?
yeah. No, it definitely is. As I had said earlier, the motivator is for most of what I'm doing is I'm going to submit this finished product somewhere. So you have to. I think it's important to get your stuff out there. There probably are people out there who have things written, they're just kind of sitting on their hard drives and they're not submitting them. And I would encourage them to.
Guilty.
I would encourage you and others to take that chance and put yourself out there and submit.
Oh yeah, well,
Because
I've stuff out there, but the thing is that
there's yeah,
you've all this stuff and you look at it and you're like, oh god, no.
there's that. Yeah, it's just when you get that yes, because whenever you get that yes that your piece has been accepted, it's a great feeling. You know, um,
Yeah, it's a
but
validation at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You create something, you want somebody to appreciate it. That's just the basic. And I think that's why
mhm,
we've progressed as a species.
mhm,
It's even from the cave paintings. You know what I mean? You told your tribe story.
Yeah.
And if you have people, the rest of the tribe sitting around, and the next shaman is telling the story, you're getting validation for your artwork. I know I'm going way back for that one, but that basic concept has stayed with humanity throughout our progression. And as I said, I want us to still progress, not go backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Star Trek's always, I always use that as you know, a great example of imagination actually leading to scientific fact. When they
mhm.
first pulled out the tricorder and everyone's like, that's not possible, or the com, when they switched it to the badge and the comms like, that's not possible, and now their technology is actually behind. It got to
Yeah.
that stage where humanity caught up, they couldn't, it was just got
Right.
kind of difficult. But if it wasn't for that spark of imagination and somebody looking at the TV screen going, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
we could do that, or if somebody hadn't thought up the crazy idea that was out there.
Right. Yeah.
Well, sorry, this could go on for about 3 hours. It's great talking to you. Obviously, haven't.
As long as you want, I've got the
Yeah, I
time.
know it's
Yeah.
out on our side. Just I'm very worried. Not that I know I can go off on tangents, not there, but um, obviously try and stay reasonably
Yeah.
focused. I think we've basically covered all the main topics. What sort of projects do you have currently in the works at the moment? What's in development?
Yeah. So I'm always writing something, whether it's a play or a short story or maybe a short screenplay. So I've got various things that I've submitted places, and who knows, maybe they'll be accepted like play will be accepted for a production, or um, story will be published in some anthology somewhere or whatever. There are a couple of my short films that maybe will be produced sometime in the near future. I myself am not really a filmmaker, so as I mentioned, I've gone to these independent horror film festivals, and when you do that, you're meeting all these great uh, people who have talents that are different from your own, and so I've made some networking connections that way. So it's possible that I'll have some short films that'll be made in the
So you have
next.
the idea, and then at least you've got the sense to go.
Right.
Well, I can't put this together. That's not my forte. Here's somebody who's an expert.
Yeah,
They can carry
exactly.
my vision
So,
forward. At least that's.
exactly.
There's so many people try to
Exactly.
do it all themselves, and that's why they fail.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Um, I do have a novella coming out in June. It's called Vanishing of the Seventh Grade.
mm-hmm.
So it's another piece that I've written that's for the young horror fans, hopefully. Um, I actually shared it with my students this year, and I got a lot of positive feedback
Okay,
from
well, if
them.
you're up for
So
that, we'll feature an excerpt. We'll feature the first chapter or something if you're down for that. That's what this show's all about. To put it out there and let people, because they're already saying read this book, it's great. But I think just having the piece narrated or performed and just giving people an example. Okay, here's a bit of the story. Go back.
yeah, so that's going to be published through DNT Publishing.
Oh,
So that's
DNT.
coming out.
Amber. It is Amber. No, it isn't.
Dawn.
Dawn Shay. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Remember I mentioned at the start I forget people's names, even though I've worked with Dawn quite a bit. I've featured quite a few of her
Yeah.
stories, including
So
some of
that,
her own. We've featured
yeah.
two of her
So
stories. So yeah, Dawn's really great. I actually want to get her on. We
yeah.
tried
So
about 6 months ago to get on to something, but scheduling fell apart.
mhm,
So yeah, get in touch. Mention to Dawn, and yeah, she's worked with us before anyway, so uh,
right. Okay.
be great. Don't
Yeah.
see any issues there. Nice.
So that's coming out, and then I'm also working with another independent author named Mark Tullius, and he publishes these line of they're kind of like choose your own adventure books, but horror. And they're called Try
Are
Not
they
to
coming back?
Die. Try Not to Die. That's what they're called.
Yeah, good. Do you remember
So
they fell off the shelf like mid 90s?
yeah,
They were
so
the
he.
rage. Like late 80s, mid 90s, they were the rage,
Mhm.
and then they just fell off. that fell off the
Yeah.
shelf.
So he's got his own line of these choose your own adventure books, but the way that these are structured, they're horror themed, right? So you actually die like 30 different ways along.
So is that the
along
aim? Is the aim to die a good death, not actually survive the mission?
Yeah. So the one that I'm working on with him is set in a dark fairy tale world. So it's like our takes on like Grimm's fairy tale characters, but
Yep.
really leaning into the grim aspects of it. So it's like some some carnage, some gore, some stuff like that. So that's been fun.
So
Been
is it
fun
going to be based
reimagine.
on page turning, or are you going to include dice? Will they have to do dice rolls? What's the?
So so it's a book. So it's like a traditional book, and
Yep.
it's just like, yeah, at certain points you're gonna reach.
So you have a junction. I remember those. You like turn to page
Yeah, it's like
72. Okay,
exactly,
you do
turn to
this.
this page if you want to do this, turn to that page if you want to
But
do
then the
that.
later ones that come out, you did that, and if you encountered a monster, then you had to roll dice.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I don't.
they became that. That was
That's
before
cool. Yeah.
Magic the Gathering, I think.
Okay.
So this was like a precursor or starting to go that direction. So what you did normally, it was like you turned to page 102, you died, and that was it.
Right.
But then the developed them into, okay, you turn to this, you encounter a monster, you roll the dice. Okay, if you scored a 6, it was a 4, then you won. Go to page 150, you carried on with the story. If not, go to this page, you're dead, out. Or you took damage.
Yeah.
They actually had character sheets. Don't know if you remember
Okay.
those.
Okay. Yeah.
So you had like a mini character sheet that pulled out. So what happened was you had like 4 hits, and you did exactly the same thing. You went through the adventure story, but then when you encountered the monster or the trap, you rolled the dice. If you got through it, fine. If you didn't, you took damage. And then there was
Yeah.
potions you could pick up, so you could actually use the pencil and eraser, so you could gain points back and then keep playing.
Hmm.
But are you going the traditional way of just turn the pages and either
Yeah.
you get cut up the pieces or you don't?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, partway through the first draft of that, it's gonna, since I'm only working an hour a day, it's taken some time to get it all done.
That's a major project.
But it's definitely making progress on that. And so, yeah, that's probably like my primary creative focus is on that. Although,
You definitely have to let me know
um,
when that comes out. I love those
yeah,
books. I thought they were wonderful. They
yeah,
were a
I
lot of fun
will.
because you got involved. You actually got invested.
Yeah, and he already has a few that he's collaborated with other authors on. So again, if you want to check them out, they're
Oh,
called
definitely. Put the links. I'll
Try
put them
Not
in the
to Die.
comments.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. But as a teacher, like I said, I've shared a lot of my own writing with my students, so sometimes I get distracted from my like major writing project,
Yes,
and
you're no longer in class. You're my focus group, and you're going to help me get this
so
right.
yeah, so I'll write something for my students,
Is that their detention?
um, like we have a theater class performance, production that we're going to put on before the school year ends. So I wrote something for that. Um, I'm going to. I just put the finishing touches on that yesterday, actually. So I'm going to be sharing the scripts with students this week, and then the week after that, we're going to start rehearsing it and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I get a little distracted. It's hard for me to focus on one project at a
Oh,
time.
that's fun. Here, you're keeping busy. Absolutely wonderful, fascinating chat. No, good to hear is your statement, and also you're actually using your career. I mean, your environment to your advantage, which is wonderful. That's anyone just trying to say to anybody, don't feel that you're limited by what you do. There's always an opportunity. It's just doing it. That's the main thing. Don't give up and don't not start. That's the message of this show, and I don't think anybody can disagree with that. Just if you don't try, how are you gonna know
Right,
what you're capable of?
right.
That's it. So many people just don't try and give up, and it doesn't. It's not even an age thing. I know we've talked a lot about young people, but even in the adulthood, there's no time that you're not allowed to start.
Right.
and that's just what the message I'm trying to spread with us. Just give it a go and let's see where we end up. And we're here to try and help. That's what the whole point of the show is.
Yeah.
So I'll just wrap up and just say thanks very much for taking time to join me tonight. Fantastic chat. This could go on for hours, and I think we'll definitely have to get you back at some point. And please keep involved with the show. Folks, if you just make sure you support Evan and his work, links are in the description. We've also featured one of his stories. He has a playlist as well, so everyone that comes on here, taking part in more than one thing, check out the playlist. And until next time, folks, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.